Hello, welcome, good evening, welcome to this Popcorn Junkies Weekly Rushes special. Look, there's the Harley Quinn's mallet and her baseball bat. Let the fight begin. Let the let the battle commence. Right. How many people in the room have seen Joker 2 or Joker Folie à Deux? Folie à Deux. Anyone seen it? Warning now to anyone joining this live. There is more than likely going to be, this is going to be spoiler laden in order for us to kind of get to grips with the carnage, the car crash, the sensational fall from grace of Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Todd Phillips, Joker. What went wrong, guys? What went wrong? So many comments. So I'm going to be flashing up. I've screenshot some of your comments actually underneath some of our reviews. We're going to talk about the audience scores. We're going to talk about the reviews. We're going to talk about the box office. We're gonna ask questions about whether it was in. I mean, we can't hide nor pretend. Me and as Evening Reese, hi Anna Charolumbus, Gabrielle, Lynn Sheard, Edward Bevington, Alison Barber, hi, all you movie fans. I don't know if Ninad's in the room yet. Leo. So um, spoiler. Boo, blah, blah. But I will try and say to you, put your fingers in your ears now at the most killer spoiler kind of moments. Morning, MeTube. Hi, MeTube. So it's obviously tanked. So here's some things. Here's some facts. Here's what's interesting when a film that you like, and me and Nadia loved this film. I'm just going to say it right from the get go. Loved it. It was for us. Check out our full spoiler review. But also, I think everyone is coming at this film in terms of its success or not as a musical is coming at it for all the wrong reasons. I also think anyone coming to this film for its success or not as a comic book film. So if you're coming at this thinking, how does this Joker fit within the universe of Gotham? Who's the Batman? Who's the right Joker? Which is the right Joker? Udi, etc., etc. I don't think either Joker film is interested in that stuff, though, of course, because it's about a character from the DC comics, it encourages those kind of conversations. And at the very edges and margins of the films, those who know the comics are like, oh yeah, that's the Arkham Asylum. Oh yeah, that's Harley Quinn. Oh yeah, that's whatever the other character was, the guy who was kind of Harvey Dent, is it? So I don't think the first film and I don't think this film are for die-hard fanboys and fangirls. But I think here's the thing that happened with the first film. The first film was an art house film, and the second film is an art house film. They're both experimental films. They're both character portraits. They're both explorations of a character that we all feel we know very well and has been shown and presented in many other films. This was about a deep dive, not even into just the origin story of a character, but into the internal psychological, schizophrenic, mental health crises details of an incredibly complex character. And to that extent, I don't actually. So when people say this film, the first did all this, but the second film didn't do, I think this film feels like I've never come across personally, and I know this isn't the case for everyone, and we want to look at why that is. I haven't come across a film that's felt more like the most logical development of the original. It felt like an absolute extension of the first film. I think where there are problems are in the marketing. I think there are problems in the expectations. I think there's a clear and real problem with the budget of this film. I think whenever I hear what the budget was, and I think the budget on this was 200 million, and the budget on the first film was 70. So the first film cost 70 billion. So parking all that aside, there's a lot of business. There's a lot of sort of Hollywood business stuff in this that I think is worth looking at and worth examining and exploring. Because I think there is a strong argument to say, because I like the film, should it have cost 200 million to make a film like this that's going to cost that, where you're going to burn so much cash? And Reese has said it here: 50 million or so went to the the top list, or the A list kind of talent, which is basically Lady Gaga, Joaquin Phoenix, and Todd Phillips, the director. So there are many things that basically hampered this from the get go, and one of them wasn't the first teaser, because I think everyone was extraordinarily excited by the first teaser. This film looks sensational. It's acted brilliantly. The layers and levels of exploration into the Joker's character, I can't think of any other film in which any other character has ever been explored to this extent. So this is a really rich and rewarding, some could argue, incredibly self-indulgent for Joaquin Phoenix. And if what I'm hearing in some of the kind of reports is true, one does begin to need to ask questions of how much was this a sort of what's it called? Not an ego sort of thing, but a sort of an ego trip, if you like, of sorts. For how much of this was this a pet project, but just a very expensive pet project for Joaquin Phoenix? I think it's an atypical comic movie. It's not a typical comic book film, but I think people are being disingenuous if they pretend that the first film was a typical comic book film. And I think this film, it's also becoming a trend to say it's an awful film. Zoe Agnew, you're absolutely right. Everyone's saying they're walking out. People aren't walking out of the cinema. I mean, everyone walks out of every film at the cinema. I do some very simple tests, and apologies to any fans of the two films I'm about to throw under the bus. If Black Adam is scoring higher than this on Rotten Tomatoes, then I know something somewhere has not gone wrong with the film, but something's gone wrong with the expectations around the film. If a film like Crazy Rich Asians can get 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and before we get into that being some kind of racist, Crazy Rich Asians was the most appalling sort of offering of a film that should speak to the Asian sort of community of America as a first film that did that. It was just so toe-curlingly bad in the way that it was made. I just felt that the Asian community of America could have been serviced with a better film. So my point on that is, I think it's one of possibly the most toe-curlingly offensive films in terms of its filmmaking I've ever seen in recent years, and that's sitting at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. So quite clearly, the numbers on Rotten Tomatoes speak to nothing. They speak to nothing, really. Now, what is alarming with this is that, let me pull up the scores on Rotten Tomatoes. You've got 33% there from the reviewers, and you've got 31% from the fans or the viewers. And I think what's happened here is a twofold kind of, what's it called? If it's fratricide, what's it called? Sort of cinicide? Maybe we need a new name for this. Maybe it needs to be called cinicide or filmicide, where there's just a desire to knife the fuck out of this film before it came out of the womb, so to speak. There were a lot of people who were very unhappy with the first film. Just they kept saying things like, I could never get on board with this. I know, and I'm, again, if you have this criticism of the first film, share it. I want to chat about it. It was derivative. It was too like Taxi Driver. It was too like King of Comedy. Why could it have not been an amplification of all those things? Why could it have not been? Why was it not a film riffing on the great, strong, rich traditions and heritage of this indie type of cinema from the 70s? For me, this film did something different, where that first film was, if you like, a recycling of the movie brat indie sensibility of American kind of low budget kind of but mainstream films. This went towards the musical, the artificial, odd, inherently bonkers world of musicality. I fucking hate musicals. I want to stab myself in the neck repeatedly with blunt spoons because they make my face just peel off in like shame. And so when the first song in this film started, I must admit I had to brace myself. It was literally brace, like on a flight. But what I thought this film did, and we did say this in the reviews, but I think it really speaks to what I think people are missing on this film. I think he took the inherent madness of breaking into song. He took the inherent madness of just breaking into song and used it as another device to open up a much deeper and a much more sort of colourful and troubling sort of vantage point on the inner workings of this guy, Arthur Fleck, the Joker's mind, and his heart. I think it was, the fact that we all accept with musicals the genre device that people just break into song and move. What I loved about this film is that they did just break into song, but they broke into song in a way that kind of emerged from a truth in them or a reality in them, rather than I feel in most musicals. I like all the bits in between the songs, and then the song happens and it feels totally artificial. I've never seen a musical where I've actually felt more during the music than I did during the characterization. And that's where I think actually this film for me is possibly one of the most radical musicals, though I don't think it's a musical. It comes in at 42 minutes of the film is musicality. Um, but also the other part of all of this that I think is interesting is everyone's talking about how this isn't true to the Joker, this isn't true to Gotham City, this has fucked up everything. Lots of people saying it's actually ruined their appreciation of the first film. Joker is a performer. He's a wannabe stand-up comedian. He's a wannabe dancer, an entertainer. He speaks to, do you remember the tap dancing coming down the stairs in the first film? He wants to be a showman, but he's so dysfunctional and he's so damaged. He can't do it, and he contorts, and that kind of the yin and the yang and the split and the schizophrenic split between his performative self and his authentic self is where all the fucking danger sits. So every time I read a review, I'm going to read loads of your comments out in a minute. Every time I see a review where they go, yeah, but this kind of isn't what the Joker was, and why are we watching a film about a man? This is one of the most avant-garde experimental portraits of mental health, the causes of mental health, the execution of a mental health crisis, a character trying to resolve those kind of conflicts. And that I'm getting close to kind of, it's not a musical, Mitri, but absolutely it uses music. How hard an idea is that to fucking get into one's head? How hard is that? And I just think that, so going back to why has this got this score? The critics don't like it when a franchise purports to be something more than they think it is. This happened with Pirates of the Caribbean. And it happened to a film which I think fell foul of this massively. And I would urge you all, though unfortunately the cast of it is shrouded in even more kind of ignominy. The Lone Ranger, I think, was an expertly executed, brilliantly entertaining. Everyone I know who's actually seen The Lone Ranger loves it. And it was decimated by the critics. Why? They didn't want Johnny Depp to be successful at launching yet another multi-billion-dollar franchise. There was a sort of resentment of the idea that this guy could sit atop yet another huge success after Pirates of the Caribbean. How could he have The Lone Ranger? And I have to say, I think The Lone Ranger, please check it out. It is one of the most beautifully crafted, brilliantly entertaining films in recent years. Huge budget, totally tanked, but it had Army Hammer in it, which makes it probably not a must-watch now because, of course, of the whole cannibalism thing. Thomas Watkin, I personally felt it was pointless for this film to be a musical. It didn't flow like great music. It's not meant to be a great musical. That's the bit I don't understand. I get you. It's using music, as there are many other different devices, like he uses dance in the other film, like films use violence, like films use music in fight scenes. It's not a musical. So I hear you. I hear that it didn't work for you. It didn't flow like great musicals do. But this is a phrase that comes up a lot in critics, and in just. But it's not saying it is a musical. Warner Brothers haven't once said this is a musical. I mean, you could argue that the confusion has crept in from the release, the early seeping out of, oh my God, it's a musical. It's like some strange kind of compulsive inability to unthink something has happened. It's not a musical. It has music in it. And so I'm not judging it as a great musical or in the vein of great musicals. So I don't think its success or failure sits within that. One of the other accusations about it is that in any musical, not that it is, but the idea is it does have musical numbers. But I would argue that all of the musical numbers in this film, I don't know if for example, sorry, I'm going fractured thoughts here, but none of us lose our shit about a pop video in which there's music, and that sometimes some of the best pop videos or music videos can be incredibly sophisticated pieces of filmmaking. I'm thinking of things like Beyonce's Lemonade. right? We don't question the quality of what we're seeing or the emotional truth of it. It's just music is in there, it's threaded in it. And so for me, when the music happened in this film, the music in this film threw open his dreams, his aspirations, his inner violence, actually. Because for anyone who's a bit funny about violence, this film isn't as violent as the first film. And yet at the same time, emotionally, I'd say it's even more troubling. There are moments of sexual assault. There are moments of, well, there's sex, which is kind of unusual in and of itself, too. Let's read a few more of your comments out. Let's have a look. Reese Roberts, let's pop you up. Also, when a movie such as this first has had such a huge box office success, often the team involved in the first is coerced to do a sequel because otherwise they hold a grudge down the line. Yeah, but also I think critics hold a grudge. A lot of critics don't want this to succeed. You know, the word sequel is a dirty word. I think the only film that's ever pulled off, being the second being critically more successful than the first, is The Godfather, right? Godfather 2, I think that won a whole heap of Oscars. So I think there will have been a sort of, and this is the bit that gets me. When you read a lot of the reviews, there's a sort of po-faced refusal to get on board with what actually this film is doing. What these critics could have done, and what I think a lot, in a weird way, as a viewer, coming to this I'm a Joker fan, I like Batman, I like comic books, I can see how this won't deliver for you. But then this isn't necessarily your film. And I think the reason the film's been punished by the audience scores is all those comic book fans who managed to find something really engaging in the first, which was its nihilism, that thing that people accused it of being, which was incel encouraging. I don't think the first film did encourage incel. Incels could have seized upon it. I think the first film spoke to the sense in all of us and everyone with any kind of mental health ruffle in their personality of not being heard, of being ignored, of not being seen. And of course, not to the extreme extent that he was going through in the first Joker, but I think it spoke to a truth in far more than just incels. I mean, that was just a way for the kind of chatterati kind of reviewers to kind of just go, oh, this film is promoting white male nihilism. And it wasn't. It wasn't at all. Some have argued that this film is trying to correct that mistake. I don't agree. I don't agree. Zoe, I'm going into this when I go see it with a positive mindset and not being influenced by reviews and Rotten Tomatoes. Well, just remember, Crazy Rich Asians, 91%. You know, it means nothing. I looked forward to it all year, Sarah D. Book date night. I don't know if my expectations were too built up, but I was a bit disappointed. Okay, interesting. Where was the heart of that disappointment? Because I'm interested to know. I mean, where was I slightly disappointed? I suppose I could have done with yet more of Lady Gaga. I wanted more of her, but I think always being left wanting more of anything is always a good thing. Reese, it was very One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is great artistically, but puts itself in a difficult position to combat the bloodthirsty fandom of. Boo Boo Blah Blah. I love a musical, so got excited as how they use the music, as I'm not a singer using the lyrics. Bell X1. I thought it was great. I don't know what they're all going on about. Sarah D. Joaquin Phoenix's acting was absolutely outstanding as always, and I love the depth the deep look into Joker's mental health issues, but I just didn't have many feelings walking out. Okay, yeah, I get you. It's fair dues. I mean, the music is used, Me Too, to give a look inside his mind. These are not show numbers. The music was the best part, allowing full character expression. Well, interestingly, I don't often agree with Mark Kermode and Simon Mayo, but Kermode made a point where he said he thinks in many ways this film is better than the first. And I think this is a much more... I think what they've been given is a stinking amount of money, which I think there are huge question marks to be asked about, to make the most esoteric art house film. And there's a line that's often said throughout the film from Harley Quinn to Joaquin Phoenix, which is, let's give them what they want, or we're not giving them what they want. And I think you could argue that this whole film, Joker 2, is riffing on the idea of what are people expecting from performers. You know, there is in this modern landscape, we put huge pressure on famous names or even influencers, but famous people or characters to deliver. It's like, and if you think about it all the way through Joker 2, I'm trying to really dodge big, meaningful spoilers. There are many moments in the script where Brendan Gleeson, the prison warden, asylum warden, they're all saying, give us a joke, tell us a joke. You're going to smile today? Have you got something funny to tell us? There's this constant expectation that he should be, performative. I thought this film couldn't have done a better job of really secreting the use of music meaningfully into the story. There was no jarring sensation for me whatsoever. It really took us deeper. And for a viewer like Nadia, actually, her point on all the music was it allowed her, although for me, in many of the music pieces, it took it into a darker place emotionally, because they were done in quite a bright and breezy fashion sometimes, but it was always sort of threaded through with a dark, twisted, bright and breeziness. They allowed for some respite. They allowed you to kind of come out of something that you could never come out of in the first Joker. The first Joker was relentless, and it was brilliant, and it was deeply fucking traumatizing. This is traumatizing, but every now and then you're kind of lifted out by a kind of tune, but that tune takes you deeper. So when people say, and a lot of critics have said, the tunes don't move the story on, the tunes take you deeper into Arthur Fleck, deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think to that extent, it's an incredibly successful, counterintuitive, counterculture comic book film. But I want to read some of the comments. Norm 2014. Let's read what you're saying. I hope so too, but the hate campaign is too strong. Many are saying this is the worst movie ever made. Which, you see, the worst movie ever made. This is an absolute joke. So let me give you a comparative on this. Where did I find it? I had to take a screenshot of this. This was in. So I don't know if anyone's seen Morbius, is it Jared Leto? Is that his name? The sort of, Marvel vampire film. One of the most risible films made in recent years. I mean, so bad, you could potentially say it was quite funny. I think Matt Smith was the best thing in it. Anyway, Cinema Score gave Joker 2 a D grade. D. You just don't get that. The lowest score ever awarded to a comic book movie. Morbius got a C plus. That once again tells you there is a campaign, and I'm certain that this isn't about spilling over, crying over spilt milk, spilling over cried milk. But there has definitely been a campaign to filmicide, to fratricide this movie, to kill this film at birth. There has been an attempt to kill this film at birth. And I genuinely believe in years to come, it will be appraised. It will be and it's not often you actually get filmmakers who take risks anymore, because the whole system disallows it. I mean, there was a strong, compelling argument that Megalopolis, the new Francis Ford Coppola film, what he's made his stock and trade kind of career all about is making films that people didn't really get, and then they ended up being absolute fucking cult classics, Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, all that kind of stuff. But this, I think, weirdly, this second film, give it time. It won't change its Rotten Tomato scores. That's there forever. But it's been killed. This film has been killed at birth. There has been an attempt to kill it off before it could breathe air, because they don't want Joaquin Phoenix to have a sequel that could work. They don't want Todd Phillips. There's a huge amount, I must say this as well, there's a huge amount of snobbery around Todd Phillips. And I hate the way in which Lady Gaga is being shot down as the cause or the reason. Not at all. She is sensational in this film. Any Lady Gaga fans here are going to absolutely love her performance. I could have done with more, but actually, less is more. It's good. And the twist and turn in their relationship is incredibly compelling. But Todd Phillips, a lot of the critics, in very sarcastic fashion, often riff on the word hangover. Will he recover? Todd Phillips will wake up to a huge hangover when he sees the box office. The reviewers don't like the fact that he's made essentially some pretty, I think the Hangover film, certainly the first Hangover film, was an incredibly sophisticated comedy. Spoke to so many truths. It was so funny. But they don't like that. He's not come from the auteur route. Todd Phillips is not the kind of director critics want to be able to make this sort of stuff. I can't think of a single frame in either one of these films that you could criticize. I can't think of a beat or a moment in their character arcs that isn't compelling or distressing or intriguing or eminently watchable. And I think the musicality of this latter film has just added a different layer, is another tool to express this. I even think all the criticisms of The Courtroom, are unnecessarily. I mean, again, he was trying something very. He was riffing on courtroom conventions, and you got given, actually, without ruining it. There's a moment with Gary Puddles where you get an incredibly intimate and meaningful moment between Joker or between Joker and Arthur Fleck, and the cleft between the two. Let's read through some more of your Morbius is morbid, says Reese Roberts. Absolutely is. Are people just ignoring, says Gabrielle, sophisticated filmmaking and thinking everything should be mainstream? Yes, I think people are really angry that a character that we all feel we have ownership of hasn't been given to us in the way that we wanted him. And the deep, deep irony, without spoilering, stick with me on this thought, because I think this is where this film is so clever. And this is the most ultimate meta moment. In this film, we see in different ways, different characters disappointed, furious, hateful towards Arthur Fleck / Joker because he's not giving them what they want him to give them. And the receipt and reception and response to this film in the real world is an absolute identical rerun and replay of the same thing. It's delivered to the Joker, the audience response, the critic response in the real world, the same response that is delivered towards Arthur Fleck and the Joker by many characters in Joker 2. It's literally now stranger than fiction. It's happened. The film has made it happen, and in a weird organic fashion. I would say that even in the comic book hero shrine of shrines, this could go down as one of the most cleverest comic book films in history. MeTube agree. This will be one of those movies that becomes a hit later. Norm, I'm worried Joaquin gets nominated for a Razzie, as it will be the most unfair thing ever because he was fantastic. But people, it's now just become, I think Zoe summed it up, it's become trendy, it's become fun, and it's the trend to bash it. I mean, like, people go, oh, everyone's saying on TikTok. It's like, how much can we kill something? How much can we pull something down? And it doesn't speak to the truth of the film whatsoever. Lucy Kitson, I just felt that we covered it all in the first film. Not sure what this one was trying to tell us. Felt like a lot of filler. This was going into the origins of why he was what he was in the first film. This was also going into his. I thought this went into the whole twisted landscape of love and connection, and where he wanted to find connection, and where he wanted to kind of rescue himself, really, from Joker. This is Arthur Fleck's film. This is a film about Arthur Fleck. Reese, they should have had more scenes of her performance that was displayed in the trailer to give her role more gravitas. Well, I was just saying over dinner, yeah, there are some scenes, like when she kisses the woman in the crowd as she's walking up the steps to the court. That was removed, and I think there was a bit of a contentious moment between her and Todd Phillips with that. Maddie hasn't seen it yet. She hasn't seen it yet. She had, they had a sort of family tragedy on her boyfriend's side, so they've been gobbled up with all of that at the moment, I'm afraid. But she is going to get to see it, and when she does see it, I'm hoping to do a review with Maddie and Nanny Di too. Nanny Di wants to see it as well. Lucy Kitson, I thought Joaquin and Gaga were incredible, but felt there was no story. Unfortunately, wanted to love it deeply. Well, I can kind of forgive. I can kind of understand the lack of story, but for me, I'm just interested in people, and there isn't a beat in this where there isn't some new layer to character and hope and hurt. I mean, I find him even more heartbreaking in this film. This is a heartbreaking film. This is about requited, unrequited, thwarted love, with self, with others, with those around you. So I found, yes, there's the conventional story arc, and then there's an emotional story arc, and I thought the emotional story arc on this was absolutely sensational. But I agree. I think one could disagree in those terms, but even a disagreement on the story arc doesn't demand it being absolutely had a gun held to its head and shot at birth. That's nice, I guess, but they lost millions. But was it worth it? Well, was it worth it? Well, that's a curious question, isn't it? It's been made. And if it's been made and it's a great film, yes, it's worth it. Was it worth it to Warner Brothers? Of course not. None of this was worth it to Warner Brothers. But you know what? I don't really care about Warner Brothers. These great big tentpole, Hollywood studios, they never take risks anymore. And in a weird way, where this is quite radical, where this is quite radical. So I just wanted to see this story that's just coming through. It's actually on Joker. Here we go. What's quite radical about this is that you could argue that at the expense of Warner Brothers, they managed to get the money to make an incredibly experimental film. And you could say, well, that's awful, that's wrong, that's terrible. They've all just run off with a huge paycheck. Yes, but hey, I think we got a much richer film. You don't get films like this made. And I tell you one thing, because of the box office reception, you're not going to get another film made like this again. So I just want to plop up some of the headlines that have been knocking about. BBC said Joker Folies-Adderleys, a dreary, underwhelming, unnecessary slog. Entirely disagree. The Independent, but what I wanted to point out is not all reviews were bad. Independent Joker Folies-Adderleys, just as bleak and daring as the original. Agree. Folies-Adderleys, a messy, lifeless sequel to Lady Gaga. This is the Telegraph. I think the director Todd Phillips said there would be no follow-up to the original, but he changed his mind, and the result is a derivative musical. Using the word derivative because that's all they said about the first film. They're just annoyed. He's made another one. Joker Folies-Adderleys, Lady Gaga electrifies in mediocre musical sequel. Agree that she electrifies. Disagree it's mediocre. Variety magazine, Joker Folies-Adderleys review, Joaquin and Lady Gaga in a cracked jukebox musical, but it doesn't let Joker be Joker enough. This is the problem. It's not a film about letting Joker be Joker enough. That's what it's about the Joker not being Joker enough, because behind the Joker is Arthur Fleck, and it's his story. Everything is subjective, absolutely. Reese, I've seen episodes 1 and 2 of The Penguin. I'm about to watch episode 3, and I am loving them. I did a review of episode 1. Absolutely loving them. And yes, you're right, the character studies. I mean, in a weird way, The Penguin is a beautiful side sort of dish alongside Joker and Joker 2. And everyone's just decided to absolutely pillory Joker 2. And it could sit alongside as a rich rendering. Just wanted to see, this story's just broken on Variety. Debacle inside the Joker Folies-Adderleys debacle. The stories are just going to keep coming. Todd Phillips wanted nothing to do with DC on the $200 million misfire. Speaking to the fact that he didn't want to cater for a DC fan base. And I think that's going to be his crime. He didn't want to tickle the tummies of the DC fanboys. And where he didn't tickle the tummies of the DC fanboys in episode 1, in the first film, he got away with that because it was nihilist. And it actually spoke to possibly the truth of those DC fanboys, many of whom are maybe sitting on their own a little bit, kind of thinking, this is awful. I don't know. But, maybe, and I think because this film I think this film does something incredibly similar to the first film, but it just chooses a whole different set of tools from the toolkit of filmmaking, which I think is sensational. I mean, I think it shows real breadth and range to Todd Phillips. But it's interesting that this story here is basically about Todd Phillips actively avoiding the DC rules and canons and laws and all that kind of stuff. So all the connections we're trying to make of parking this, is that the character who plays, is that Barry Keown's Joker? Is that Heath Ledger's? He's not interested in any of that whatsoever. I'm not going to give away. Yeah, so it's the hardcore DC fan base that will be voting it low on Rotten Tomatoes. Absolutely. Well, there we go, guys. Let me just give you some more comments from underneath our review earlier in the week. These were good. This is you, MeTube. I thought it was a really good film. I think the reason it's not commercial is that too many people expected a Joker comic book movie with the Joker trying to pull off some diabolical plan to cause chaos. What they got was an intense movie about mental illness. I'm sort of abbreviating here. SBCE3UJ, thank you. Excellent review of a masterpiece of a film. Felt exactly how you did. A piece of art. One of those brilliant films I will be watching the rest of my life. I love when Gaga said we're not giving the audience what they want. I think she meant us. I agree. I just want to come back and thank you for this review. I nearly didn't see Joker 2 because of all the negative reviews, but your review changed my mind, and I'm so glad I did. And this is the most important thing. I think all the things that people are complaining about are the things that made me love it. People need to let go of what they expected this movie to be and go in with an open mind. For me, it's so frustrating that a great film doesn't get seen because a bunch of absolute numpties just decide, excuse me. It's a very classily made film. Of course, it doesn't mean it's going to tick all your boxes, but believe me, this is no Morbius. This is no Crazy Rich Asians. This is no Black Adam. This is class. This is class, but it's gonna either be your cup of tea as a character portrait or not. I appreciate this review, Kevin Cunningham, for highlighting the positive aspects, not just focusing on whether Arthur fits the traditional mold of the Joker. It's refreshing to see someone acknowledge the film's exploration of mental health and humanity rather than just being fixated on his connection to the iconic villain. It seems like some people are more concerned with the character's title than his actual struggles. And I was really appreciated this one, Kevin Cunningham. I don't know if you see this, because I think too many reviewers don't home in on the humanity of films. It's like we really try in all of our reviews, whether it be superheroes or films like The Substance recently or whatever. We've just seen the Saoirse Ronan, The Outrun. We're going to be reviewing that. Yes, there's the technicalities. Yes, there's the direction, the acting, the scene setting, script, But there's also the humanity of a story and whether the truth of a story works. And I don't think that gets picked up on enough. And for me, that's what defines these Joker films. They're films about humanity. This made me so happy, Magical Pig. I feel like I'm the only person who loved the film and understood the messages and themes it was trying to convey, and you guys described everything I felt about the film perfectly. The first one is pure gold and diamonds, says Louis Bourge, in the spirit of balance. This so-called sequel is pure crap, he says. 0 out of 10. Don't agree. Olive Ordinary, so glad to finally see a good, thorough review of this movie. You two caught on to all the nuance and the beauty of the film. I hope people turn around on this film, but if not, at least we got an amazing cult classic on our hands. Rest 1630. I agree with your review. I loved it. It had a deep emotional impact. I'm glad it explored Arthur Fleck's twin personality. I feel he created Joker to protect himself from that abuse he experienced. He created a fantasy world, and that made him attractive and popular. Harley Quinn checked into the facility so she could be close to the Joker. Spoiler alert, everyone. He was punished when he showed his vulnerable side. It's part of human condition that when you open yourself to love, you are making yourself vulnerable and open to be abused and mistreated, which is why, for me, I think it's an even more traumatizing film than the first one. And when you talk about story arc, maybe at the same time, this is a film, or maybe this is a film where one should be talking about character arc. And again, I'm seeing Sarah D say I'm not a DC fan, I'm a Joker fan. I think the problem with this film is because it's got Joker in the title, it's not a DC film. It just isn't. And that's a marketing problem. And the marketing team at Warner Brothers, I think, should have sold this. They shouldn't have shown it at Venice. It prefigured. Too many mediocre reviews came out. A struggle to get to grips with it. There was obviously a struggle at inception. This is a film with an indie sensibility, but this film, unlike the first, was given a staggering kind of Avengers-style budget. I too thought the reaction to this movie is meta and life imitating art. That's my strongest takeout on this film. I think what the response to this film, the negative response to this film, is an identical meta reflection of what you see on screen. It's bizarre. Thank you guys for this review. It's exactly how I felt. I'm surprised how critics are ripping it apart, Michael. GHSRCK, I loved it. I don't understand the hate, but you like what you like. I really don't think it's that bad, says AA7NE. It's not better than the first, but I still liked it. Nenad, the film serves as a sequel to the original, but stands out as an exceptional, successful addition to DC. Cast is top-notch. Although the music remains masterful, it doesn't quite reach the heights of the first installment. The musical elements are seamlessly woven together to depict his escape into an imaginative show world, providing relief from his sad and tragic reality. It pulls us back into the cold, grim, and unforgiving reality of a brutal world where the vulnerable must struggle for survival. It is about vulnerability. It's about vulnerability. Final comments here from others. I love this movie, Jose, so much more than the first one. I believe Joker Folie à Deux will be critically reevaluated, or at least will have a cult following in the future for being such a big budget, bonkers, unexpected kind of experimental masterpiece. Thank God here in Portugal, it's getting great reviews from several established and renowned film critics. Well, there you go. And, the film absolutely dive bombed at the box office. It's 37 million or something in America, but I think it's garnered 112 million across the world. So it's been a failure at the box office and with the critics, but I think it's a critical masterpiece personally. That was the strongest message of the film, says MeTube. Being vulnerable can destroy you if your mind is in a state not able to handle it. That's exactly it. Nenad got it. MeTube's got it. We've all got it. And in fact, I keep going back to when you watch it and you feel yourself having this kind of, because I got a bit intolerant at one point. I was like, why is he taking the mask off? Why is he? And then you think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm the one who's making the demands here. He wants to be vulnerable, but we're all making him not be vulnerable. We're all demanding him to be the masked up nutter. So there we go. Anyway, guys, thanks for all your comments. What went wrong? Did it go wrong? I don't think it did go wrong. I just think it's just been unfairly much maligned and targeted. But have a lovely evening, guys. When you've seen it, please share your thoughts beneath here. Please keep the conversation going on, and please spread the word. Please say, check it out. It's not what you think it is. Anyway, guys, lots of love. Brilliant conversation. Thanks for all your contributions, and thanks for all your comments that we screenshot and that you popped under our full review. Bye.